So, welcome to my little book report. This is my reflections on Genesis 40, my takeaways, lessons, things I learned, things that stood out to me. So, in this chapter, if you are not familiar or it's been a minute, I would suggest pausing and refreshing your memory on 40 because I'm not going to read through it. But this is where Joesph is in prison and he interprets the dreams of the baker and the cupbearer. And what really stood out to me in this whole chapter is Joseph's response in seasons of suffering. And this seems to be a common theme through these most recent chapters, the surrounding chapters, shall we say, of Genesis and Joseph's story. And this is very relatable to me because I am in a season of suffering. I have lost 2 children in 3 years, and it has been interesting to not go too deep into it. I'm 4 months out from the most recent passing of one of my children and 3 years out from the other one, and so I'm still processing everything. And so I just really, it was very special to me to see Joseph's, to understand, to read about Joseph's response to his suffering. And if you're in a season of suffering, then come along with me. Let's look into this. And I'm on my morning walk, and so come on, walk with me, and let's reflect on this. So Joesph, he's still in prison. He's still forgotten. He's still serving. He's still faithful. And over again, Joesph serves others. We see him serving his brothers, Potiphar, the baker, the cupbearer. He attends to them, especially the cupbearer and the baker, and he interprets their dreams and he ministers to them, and he points them to God, even in prison, because they're, as far as I understand, they're trying to get the dream interpretations. This is a big thing at this time in Egypt, where they look to these polytheistic style dream manuals to interpret their dreams. And he points them to God, and he says only God, the one true God, can interpret dreams. And so here he's evangelizing to them, basically. And so, even in prison, he's pointing people to God. And over again, he not only serves people, but he is mistreated. He's overlooked. He's betrayed in return. And the cupbearer, the one person who could help him, simply forgets him. And so this common theme throughout these chapters, including 40, Joesph goes from favored to stripped to betrayed to the pit again and again. Like he's in the pit again. This prison is a pit. So he's here again. And yet somehow he does not become bitter. He does not become calloused. He does not become joyless. And I love this chapter because I have been there. After the passing of my first daughter, I became those things. And I had to go through a transformation with God to get on up out of that. And but he doesn't start thinking like some of us. He doesn't start thinking, every time I get close to people, they just hurt me. He doesn't let the grumbling take root. Man, in my last season of grief, I was letting the grumbling take root, for sure. Instead, he counts it worth it because God has called him there, simply because God has called him there. And man, this is a good lesson about serving where God has you, even when it hurts, even when it's hard. We don't see Joesph pushing back whenever he is betrayed. He is much like Jesus. He remains quiet and he just kind of accepts it. He doesn't fight the process. He surrenders. He stays and he serves where God has placed him, even when that place is slavery or prison. And right now, in chapter 40, he is undoubtedly in a dark and suffering season. He's been there. He's been a slave. Yet through it all, he remains willing to be a vessel God can use to bless others. And this reminds me so much of my daughter Jade, because she was the first child that I had that passed. She passed one day before her 16th birthday, and she went through a 2-year cancer battle. And through all of it, she was always trying to cheer up all the other kids in the hospital. She was serving. She was positive. I never, hardly ever heard her grumble about her situation. She used that situation to inspire others on how to endure pain well. And that's how she went. And even in her final days, she refused, even on her deathbed, when all hope had seemed lost, she refused to let that thing take her identity, her hope, her positivity, and her faith that she would be healed by her birthday. That was what she said. I'm going to be healed by my birthday. And she passed one day before her 16th birthday. But yeah, in Genesis 40, while the prisoners are saddened, Joesph he notices them. He attends to them. He serves them. He ministers, and in a sense, he evangelizes, pointing them to God as the interpreter of their dreams, all while he himself is suffering. And that's why it reminded me of my daughter. And you know what? I really need the examples of people like my daughter and Joesph, because after my daughter passed and I was in my own season of suffering, I did not respond well. And I think, the good news is we have Jesus. And the good news is at any time we can choose God. We can choose to make him first in our suffering, and then everything changes. That's when the game changes. That's what happened to me about 2 years after, going through this deep grief journey. I chose God. And wow, that year, he just changed everything. And now, I'm 4 months in again. So we're a year and 4 months with God, or somewhere in there. A year plus, and everything is totally, totally different. And that is a result of choosing not to hang on to bitterness and to serve others and to accept where you are. And that doesn't mean that we're in denial, doesn't mean we can't feel what we feel, but it's this heart posture overall. And so, yeah. And what is striking in this to me is that he rarely asks for himself. Only once have I seen so far in my studies, and I'm only in chapter 40, so I know there's more to Joseph's story, but only once do I see him asking the cupbearer to remember him. Otherwise, his focus is not on escape. It is on faithfulness where he is. And yeah, he just simply does his best where he is placed, even if it's not what he, wants. Sure, this is the complete opposite of what he wants. But I don't know, this story is just giving me personally a template for how to respond in suffering. And I feel like this is a really powerful lesson for us all. We all eventually will endure seasons of suffering, I think. Maybe not all of us. I think if you live long enough, you will. Joesph shows us what it looks like to live in suffering without becoming consumed by it. He teaches us that we cannot serve two masters. And this was a big lesson for me in the last chapter of Grief versus this one. We cannot serve two masters. I want to say that again. And Matthew 6:24. This is where it says, no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. There's more to that verse, but that's what's relevant here. So we can either trust God fully where we are placed. We can put him on the throne of our heart. We can serve others faithfully. We can let go of offense and bitterness and grumbling and self-seeking and rushing the process and rushing God. Okay, so we can let that go. That's our sacrifice. To exchange it for something better. That's what I had to do. I had to get to a point where I was like, I don't want to live this way anymore. This is miserable. But in that process, I have to be willing to let all that go. So, or we can do the opposite. Like what I did. We can hold on to the offense. We can complain. We can become bitter. We can turn inward. We can try to control the situation. We can sit there and just ruminate on it in a negative way. But we cannot do both. We cannot have God with us like Joesph did and be in that heart posture. That I know from experience. We cannot do both. If we choose bitterness, we are no longer serving God in that moment. We are serving the enemy. He becomes the Lord of our heart, and we are ruled by him. But if we want God's presence with us, like I said, like Joesph had in everything, then we must make the same choice Joesph did. We have to let go of the offense. We have to trust God anyway, and that's not always easy. Trust me, it is not always easy, but it's a choice that you make. You do not let your emotions and the world and this culture and however you've been brought up there, the pattern that is, we talked about temptation in the last one. You have to resist that. You have to make a choice to resist that. And God will help you. If you feel weak in that area, God will help you. I am living proof. I did not have it in me to change that, but God did. And I prayed to God, and he came into that space, and he helped me to change my attitude and my heart posture. Okay? So I'm not sitting there saying this is easy, but that is the sacrifice. You have to make a choice. I'm going to let that go, and you have to make that choice over and over and over again, and you have to give it to God. But so God's hand in the process, I want to talk about that. Joseph's life shows me at least something deeper. I don't know if it's the same for you, but what the enemy meant for his demise, God used for his purposes to shape Joesph, to refine him, to position him. He took all of that and he turned it around. He's like, not today, Satan, not today. Okay? You did what you did, but I'm going to use it for good. And I'm going to use it to lift Joesph up. So, and if we want the same hand of God in our lives, in suffering seasons, and all the time, we have to respond the same way, with surrender, with faithfulness, with a servant heart. Joesph didn't waste his suffering. I love that, and that's something my daughter used to always say. Don't let it take more from you than you take from it. Don't. Joesph let it form him. And this was a really, really good takeaway that I got. So we're talking about the cupbearer in this chapter. And the cupbearer is somebody that tastes the cup before the king tries it. In case anyone is trying to assassinate him or poison him, he is someone who is going to put his life on the line for the king, and he's going to take it. He's going to take that poisoned cup for him. And this is another layer that just deepens this even more. So the role of the cupbearer, he's going to die in place of the king, basically, right? He's going to sacrifice his own life for the king. He's ride or die. He is someone who's constantly with the king. He sees him in his best. He sees him in his worst. He sees him in private. He sees him in public. He is trusted. He's protective. He's a counselor to the king. And this is just pointing to Christ for me. Jesus is our one true cupbearer. In the Garden of Gethsemane, he faced the cup of suffering, holding the full weight of God's wrath for humanity. He did not want to drink it. He said, I don't remember exactly how he says it, but God, basically, can you take this from me if it's possible, but not my will, your will. I'm sure Joesph felt the same way, and I didn't have that attitude until I started including God in my suffering. And when my last daughter passed at the age of 12, I remember, I just had such a different attitude, even though it was just as painful to let her go as my first daughter. I was like, not my will, but yours, no matter how much I want this. And it really goes to show suffering shapes you. It really does. It changes you, and it can change you for the worst, or it can change you for the better, but that's kind of beside the point. So anyway, but yeah, Jesus took it all. He did not want to drink it, but he stepped forward and he took that poisonous cup anyway. He drank from our cup. Our cup, which is similar to the king's cup, with this wine in it. And I love the analogy of the wine and the bread here in this chapter. We got the drink and we got the food. We got the baker. And I haven't looked into that, so I'm not going to go there. But yeah, this would have been poison for us. But Jesus took it. The King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, stepped in front of it and took it for us lowly nobodies. Like, it's interesting that the cupbearer is taking it for the king, right? Kind of understandable. But Jesus, he does a switcheroo. He takes it for us. We're enemies to God. And he takes it for us. So, yeah, he found us worthy to take a cup for us. And Jesus carries every quality of the cupbearer. He lays down his life for us. He is constantly near. He is trustworthy. He sees everything in private and still advocates for us. He counsels and leads us. And I want to add this one on, even though it's kind of a little separate. But he comes into the prison and he rescues us. Okay, he's with us in the prison. He serves the prisoners, which is us. And so, yeah, like, this chapter just really changed. I mean, I'm being changed anyways, but this is kind of the icing on the cake, if you will. Like, how we are responding to suffering, how I'm responding to suffering. When you realize the depth, when you start reading the Bible. I just finished my first read through of the Bible. This is my second deep studying at this point. And, like, I don't know how. I wish, I keep saying this, I wish I would have found the Bible sooner, because it would have changed everything. It's literally changing everything, because there's no way, hang on, someone's messaging me, just a second. Let me put pause. Okay, sorry, my mom was messaging me. Where was I going with that? So yeah, I don't see, after going through the whole Bible, to me, I just completely changed my attitude towards suffering, because when you realize the depth of the cup that Jesus drank for us, the depth of the poison, the depth of the suffering, it changes how you see your own suffering, I think, for me, in my experience. It doesn't mean that your pain isn't real, but it puts it into perspective. He took the full weight. He drank the poison. He carried what would have destroyed us. And I think when you understand that, something shifts, because complaining begins to fade. Bitterness loses its grip. Gratitude begins to rise. Because whatever suffering we are walking through, no matter how hard, it is nothing compared to what he endured for us. He took the bulk of it. And when we choose God in the suffering, whatever our portion of suffering is, whatever little is left in that cup that Jesus drank for us, God has a purpose in it. There wouldn't be anything left if he didn't have a purpose in it. As long as we are with him, he will take it and he will use that. He allows us to have some kind of suffering to mold, to shape, to refine us for elevation and promotion. Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. So yeah, if the little bit of suffering that we have is for our good. So like, how can you complain at all? Because Jesus took all of it, and the little bit that is left is for our good. Like how do you complain? I don't know. It completely removed that from me. And I still have my days, don't get me wrong. That old man creeps up again. But again, I have to make that choice. Is God going to be on the throne of this? And I'm going to let him take his time and do his work in turning this into good and using it? The enemy has no grip here. It's all for God. It's for his purposes. It's for refining me. It's for my good. But if I put the enemy on the throne of my heart and I don't make that choice, and I start complaining and getting into bitterness and, letting that grumbling take root in me, I'm going to get just what I get. And then the suffering has no purpose. And the more I get into the Bible, the more the suffering has purpose. And then I can endure it. And then I have faith. Then I have trust. The more stories I read like Joseph's, it's like it just breeds this trust in you, this trust in God, that he is good. And if I'm here, there's a reason. And the realization that produces humility and gratitude and willingness to trust God through it all. So, I don't know. I think this is all just to say, what I took away from Genesis 40 is when you are in a hard place, stay where God places you. If you are with him and it's not something he can ultimately prosper you with, then you wouldn't be there. So if you're there, you have a purpose. So trust it. Wait. Serve God there. Have a good attitude while you're there. In his good timing, when you're ripe, when you're ready, he will remove you from that. So don't let suffering turn you bitter. Don't let betrayal make you calloused. Don't let delay make you complain. Remember, you cannot serve two masters. Instead, we are called to remain faithful, to serve others as if we're serving God, wherever he has us, to trust his placement, to release offense. Because if you don't, you have to make a choice. Which one is it going to be? You can't have both. You can't have both. And I hear people, and I did it too, so this is not me casting judgment, but I hear people all the time, where is God? Where is he? And I had that too. Where is he? How come he didn't answer me? How come he didn't hear me? But I had to get into the Bible, and I had to get to know God. And not just what I thought. And once I got to know him, I'm like, oh, he's been here the whole damn time. I'm just blind to it. So, anyway. But yeah, like Joesph, you may not be able to control your situation, but you can control your response. You may not currently have all the freedom and control you want, but like my daughter, you have to let this outer position, like Joseph's, where it seems like he was a slave, you cannot let it steal your true identity. Because your ransom, your debt, your bail was paid by Jesus Christ. You were bought with a price. Jesus freed you from your prison, and he already restored your identity as an heir of the Most High God. You're an heir in his kingdom. So through it all, don't forget whose you are. This world and everything in it and everything that happens, all the suffering, it will try to strip you of your identity and your high place over and over again, like Joesph. And if it is rooted, your identity and who you are serving, if it is rooted in the world, then they will surely be successful in getting you to buy into their reduction of you to nothing. But if your identity is set in God, like Joesph, it doesn't matter what happens. He serves God, and he serves God alone, and his identity was in God and God alone. So it didn't matter what happened. If your identity is in God, then it doesn't matter what they try. You remain rooted in the deepest, most inner truth of who you are, and that God is working it out for your good. And oh my goodness, talk about regulated nervous system. It don't matter what's happening. You are rooted. You're not moved. And that's a process. God has to come and pick us up out of the pit, and he has to take us on a journey to refine us. And it's thing after thing after thing sometimes that does the refining. But as long as we stay with him and we know it's for our good and we stay connected, the enemy cannot touch us there. We might have to go through some things to get refined, but it will be ultimately for God's purpose. Okay, well, I think that's all I have for today on chapter 40. Thanks for joining me on my walk. It is beautiful out here, and it was lovely having you come along. So I love you, and we'll talk later.